Hey everybody, I'm Alice McClellan.
And I'm Ace McClellan.
And we're the Backtrack Brothers. We go back and watch classic movies and talk about how they hold up now.
We're going to first talk about our personal history of the movie, then go into visuals, soundtrack, and acting. Then we're going to go into the spoiler zone.
Spoiler zone.
And talk about the plot and our odds and ends and overall how we think the movie holds up.
That's right. This week, we're covering The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Let's start with talking about our personal history with this movie. Mason, do you have any precursor history with this other than this being the first Guess the Plot video we ever did?
Yes, so it actually was. Besides like the information you told me on the Guess the Plot video, which you should check out.
Definitely.
There was nothing I really knew about the movie except for the here's Johnny thing.
Right.
Everyone knows that. It doesn't really tie into the plot besides, Jack is a man.
Right, exactly.
So,
which, if you've seen the trailer, everyone knows that.
Yeah, if you heard of the movie, everyone knows that.
Right. So my personal history, a little bit different. I grew up with a half-sister, so not related to Mason, but related to me. We don't need to go into details. Anyway, my sister was obsessed with Stephen King novels and therefore loved the movies. And she was considered, 6, 7 years older than me. So she was a teenager when I was 6 or 7 years old, and she decided that would be the appropriate time to show me The Shining. Needless to say, I was scared of bathtubs for many, many years. I needed someone to help me go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I'm not joking.
You're not joking.
And guess who had to do it? My sister. That was her punishment. Yeah, so that was my introduction to the film. So needless to say, it took a little time for me to warm up to watching the movie. I got to around probably college age. I was probably 18, 19 when I watched it. Eventually, I just decided I gotta confront this fear and watch a movie.
As a college student. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I did it. So I watched the movie. I actually ended up loving it, and we're gonna talk about why, but that's kind of like my personal jaded history where I originally hated and was super terrified of this movie, and now I love it. I've seen it double digit times, and I can't wait to talk about it today.
Cool.
Here we go, everybody. Next up, we are going to talk about the visuals. So Mason, why don't you kind of tell us anything you noticed, positive or negative, on the visual side of this film?
Instead of Spider-Man and all that stuff, this movie didn't really use a lot of CGI or any extreme effects. No,
all practical.
Yeah,
and it's part of what's so effective about it.
Yeah, and that's what makes it look great and not super dated. So the blood and the blood going through the houses, the holes and when people get chopped up, all that looks really real. And if it was CGI blood or something, it wouldn't. So I'm glad they kind of went the practical route, and I'm curious to see how they did it, because it did look good.
It's amazing how the blood in this movie that came out 30, 40 years ago looks better than current Saw movies.
Yeah.
But you answered it. It's the CGI. They went practical, and you think about movies like The Thing, which I don't think you've watched, but those movies that came out back then that just used basically all practical effects, I think they're way better than the type of bloody, gory stuff we get today where it's all fake.
Yeah,
that's my personal opinion.
It makes it look more real too, and it makes it scarier.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
And even with the editing, with the scares and stuff, it was it'd be one thing at one moment, and then cut away and cut back to it, and it's a whole nother thing.
Oh, it's
and
great.
that was when it's that other thing and scary, it's oh shit. So that was part of the scare factor.
Absolutely. Visual cues, I think the visual cues in this movie are very effective.
Yes.
All of the things that you're supposed to be afraid of. And what I like is, it's not even it's super gory stuff. No. It's just stuff that creeps you the F out. It's just ugh.
And no jumps, it's barely any jump scares.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more than one jump scare in it.
Yeah, and even that, it's I think honestly one of the most effective jump scares was they got a title card for Tuesday. I think my wife almost peed herself. There's a really loud sound that came with it. No, Tuesday. But yes, to your point, Mason, I don't think there are no jump scares that are cheap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're all effective and well done and not overused.
Dude, if there was someone shut the door and there's somebody behind the door, it just goes hi, and then ah! If there was something like that, that's in modern horror movies.
Right.
It would have ruined it for me.
I think so. I agree. It's definitely a different type of horror movie. It's not your standard slasher. It's not, something that just is a crappy independent film that someone just shoved out with a, very same old horror movie plot. This is unique. And you know, it's based on a Stephen King novel, which helps. But still, this movie has a personality of its own, you know?
And there was one cut of like the kid with like the Home Alone face. And I even mentioned in the reaction video, which you should check out. Yep. But I just find that like it would go like from the cut with like scary girls and then cut to him going like, and it's like we didn't need to see that. I don't know. I found it kind of.
I think one of the strongest parts of the film are those visions, where they have those quick montages where they just show you glimpses, typically of what's going to happen, right? And you see it through the people's eyes. I don't want to get too far into spoilers here, but I thought that those visual tricks of having those, there's no transitions. It's just like it's flashing on the screen for half a second. It's almost like subliminal messaging how it works.
It's no loud noise either. It's just quick, like kind of showing you what's to come, like a little teaser.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, you find more about these visions in the future and like how each one of these little like clips actually has an impact.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it cool. But I think the Home Alone face is the one thing that didn't really evolve.
You need to separate your disdain for Home Alone from the rest of the
fact that it looks like Home Alone. It's just the fact that, you know, there's like all these scary visuals and it's the kid's reaction.
I think
obviously the kid's gonna be scared.
We'll talk about this later, but I think you're not connecting what moment that face was connected to.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later in the spoiler section.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one thing, and I watched, you know the movie 1917, right?
Yes, I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
Okay, so one really cool thing that movie does is with its long camera shots, it like barely has any cuts.
It's awesome.
And if it does, it's like they go behind a tree and then they cut out of the tree.
Right.
And it's like...
It like cuts through woods or cuts through walls and exactly.
It really immerses you in it. It makes you feel like that you're part of the movie. While it might make it feel kind of slow, it still, you know, gives you that immersion factor and you get to see everything. They're not skipping any corners.
Yeah.
With this movie, it kind of does that too when they're walking through like
does a lot.
Touring it, and when they're like when the guy goes in like the ballroom and all the people are like partying.
Yeah.
That whole thing, I think there was like 2 cuts.
Yeah, no, you're exactly.
It's cool, and I like how it kind of shows you everything. It lets you, the viewer, look around.
Exactly.
And even in the scary moments, lets you kind of look around the corners with the characters.
Right.
You know, when the kid's on like the little tricycle, whatever.
Yeah.
And he's little.
Those are my favorite shots. I love the tricycle.
And when he turns the corner, you turn the corner with him.
Right.
There's one specific scene where he turns the corner, and you don't see what's behind it, and you see him go around, and I think it's like screaming, and you know something's back there that you don't want to find out about.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it feels like you're actually with the character and walking through the hallways with them, which is a very cool feeling. And it's something you typically only get nowadays from like the found footage movies, like those kind of give you that feeling. But Kubrick is able to give you that feeling, but also still give you a professional movie.
Yeah.
While keeping it cinematic, it's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, no, and that's something that Kubrick is really known for. You'll see with other movies that he's done, like Someday You'll Learn About Clockwork Orange. That's actually a very popular book for high schoolers, but it's a great movie too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other Stanley Kubrick films that you're going to have to check out, and they all hold up great. He does a lot of really cool visual techniques. Like think about the part where you see the model of the maze, and then it zooms in and it actually shows Wendy and Danny in the maze.
Yeah.
Like those types of cool little visual tricks, he's very talented and very skilled at doing.
Yeah.
Kind of set the bar for other people coming after him to imitate him. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
If you talk to a lot of modern directors, you say, oh, who are the people that you watched when you grew up and modeled yourself after? Most of them will name Kubrick as at least one of their influences, for sure. I really am a huge fan of the location of this film. The hotel, the Overlook Hotel, is really cool. Like I think it's a great setting, and like you said, with those one long shots, you feel like you're getting the tour yourself. You're walking the hallways, and you're almost feeling like you are living there with this family, which makes it all that much more scary. Yeah, because you feel like you're like in there with them. Like you can be, you know, a victim as well. I urge you to look up now that you've seen the movie. There's all type of YouTube videos, and there's a documentary called Room 237, which is all about like people think there's all these hidden mysteries and meanings in this movie, and they talk about how they constructed the set, and they're like the way that you take on the past, it's not possible for the hotel to be built that way. So it kind of brings out there's even more visual tricks that you don't even realize watching the movie. But you watch these documentaries, you're like, damn it, I didn't realize watching the movie, and I watched it 5 times. There's stuff that blew me away. So I highly encourage you or anyone else, check out those YouTube videos or the actual legitimate documentaries that are out there and learn about Kubrick's techniques and what he did, and also learn about how he kind of just completely destroyed Shelley Duvall. We'll talk about that later. Everybody, we know what time it is. It's time to dive into the audio portion of this movie review / debate. Mason, what are your thoughts on the audio or score for The Shining?
I first give my thoughts on you doing the dive thing.
You're more than welcome to speak your mind.
Never do that again.
I'm doing it.
For every single one.
This is my house.
Dive into acting.
My house, my camera, my lights. You feel free to buy all those things and host the operation yourself, and I'll stop diving. For now, we're in there.
For the soundtrack, I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought especially, like, I don't know who composed it. Or
Yeah, I got that information.
Thank you, Alex.
The composer for this film is Wendy Carlos, and the placement of the music in the specific scenes was done by music editor Gordon Stainforth. Don't make fun of his name.
The Force Stain.
Oh, Jesus.
I thought the audio was great. There was certain points where it's like dead quiet, where you can really hear the characters talk, and again, it immerses you.
Yeah.
When they're driving, there's like big, like dramatic music.
Dude, and like those faint screams.
Yeah.
Well, they start as faint, and by the time you get to the hotel, they're like, wah!
And then there's like the moments where there's like, you know, the really like distorted audio of like this, you know, the screaming and
dude.
like the like scratch, like it sounds like scratching on chalkboard.
There's just random sounds.
Yeah.
Like I heard like rattling of like tin cans and shit. I'm like, what? Like this is the most random chorus I've ever heard. Like this collection of musicians are like playing tin cans in the triangle and bongo drums. Like what the fuck is going on? Someone's in the back. Ah!
They have a bunch of great like build up noises to like everything, like, you know, the they call it like The Shining, right? With like the kid and the what's the guy's name?
His name is Dick Halloran.
All right, I'm just gonna call him Dick because to a 14-year-old, that's really funny.
That's ha.
So for the kid and for Dick, when they have these like, you know, shinings or whatever, that whole build-up thing, you know, as soon as you hear those like little faint things, you're like, oh, something bad good.
So glad you picked that up. So glad you picked that up, because that's exactly what happened. They would ramp up that sound as the shining was about to happen, no matter whatever that is. And I'm not going to get into details without the spoiler section, but we'll do that. Yeah, Mason, I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of upset because you took all the words out of my mouth. I absolutely adore, I love this score. I'll make this argument right now. I think this is the best horror movie score that I have heard and enjoyed. In terms of affecting me on an emotional level, I think this score takes me to that creeped out horror space that I want to be in.
Yes.
Not grossed out, it's so gory. Not that. Like just that creepy, unsettled, that feeling. It's so hard to be. Everyone knows like what I'm talking about. This movie and this score specifically nails that so hard. My wife, we stopped this to like make popcorn and get snacks because we're fat. And
Kill Americans.
And she says, oh my God, my heart is like racing. It is out of control. And like we weren't even halfway through the movie. Next up, Mason, we are going into the acting category. We're gonna...
Thank God you didn't
we have gotten out of the pool. We're drying off. We got our towel. And we're gonna start talking to actors. Sound good? All right, cool. So, first off, let's talk about Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson. And no, I don't know if there was a reason for Jack and Jack. Don't
Might have made it easier for the directors.
Yeah, and the actors.
And the actors.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Danny, too.
His name Danny?
Yeah, his real name's Danny too. It's just Shelley has to go by Wendy. Because fuck her. You'll see. We'll talk more about that later. You're Wendy and you'll like it. We are now going to talk about Jack Torrance, for real. We're going to leave the other stuff behind. We're going to talk about Jack Torrance. So, what were your thoughts on Jack Nicholson's performance?
So, I thought he did great as, like, you know, making himself seem more insane throughout the movie.
Yeah.
These little things that he does, or these little, like, quick reactions that are, like, you know, this guy's, like, something's off.
He clearly is somewhat off, even from the opening scene in that interview, but then it deteriorates even further, is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And around the 45-minute mark, that's where he starts to really get, you know, into it, and that's where he probably enjoyed doing it. I'd imagine he just could go off as this insane guy, and I think some of the lines, like some of the lines were a bit corny, like the three little pigs thing.
So you think it would be better if he was more menacing in that moment instead of talking about the three little pigs? I get that. I can follow that. I think it is tough because he's trying to, I think, show how insane he is by how silly, the type of silly things he's talking about while trying to murder his wife. So I think that's kind of the angle. But to your point, I think you nailed his approach, his character. I think, to your point, Jack Nicholson is like made for this type of role. Like even just like the hair and just his look, like he just has that crazy smile. I would say really once you get to the bartender scene where you meet Lloyd and that whole thing starts, that's where he completely flips that switch and he really starts to let loose. But to your point, you can see he's definitely unstable from the start. You hear he's had a prior incident, all this different stuff. And even when he's talking about that prior incident, the conflict within him, you can tell. I think he does a really good job portraying that. Right. And I think he does a good job of portraying that. But he's also lying to himself. You can see it to a certain point too. So you can kind of see why he's a piece of shit. Next up, we're talking about Miss Wendy Torrance, who's played by Shelley Duvall. What did you think about Shelley?
So I didn't think Shelley was awful.
Okay.
I thought there was some mixed kind of things, like when she's talking with, when she's talking with Danny or like Jack. Sometimes the dialogue will seem kind of like forced with her. But I feel like overall her emotional acting is great.
Yeah.
I think her scale with that is good.
She's definitely believable in terms of being a paranoid psychopath. Or paranoid, scared of everything around her. You know what I mean? She just puts off that anxiety-induced energy. And
I don't know what makeup they did with her face, or if that was just all natural, but especially towards the end, she looked completely destroyed.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the point I was hinting at earlier, so we can talk about that now. So if you go and watch the Kubrick, the documentaries about this movie or YouTube series, I'm sure you'll find stuff out there around how this movie was made. One of the biggest things is that Shelley Duvall was essentially tortured throughout the making of this movie, specifically by Stanley Kubrick. Like, he wouldn't treat her well. Like, he would treat her like shit. He wanted her to be mentally deteriorated for this film. She looks that way for a reason. It's not because they just did really good makeup. There's some other stuff going on there, unfortunately. Danny boy, oh Danny boy, we're gonna talk about our boy Danny, played by Danny Lloyd.
Danny is the boy. I thought he was good. I thought, his face and when he's possessed is very
Well, he's not possessed, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but he just had that...
He's communicating through the shine. That's what's happening here. But go forward.
When he's going all seizure into bed. That's kind of
that's him communicating with
and that looks very real.
Yeah.
And I think, I was a kid, if it was really good makeup, if it was torture, how they made him do that, but I think as a kid, he could put on a good performance overall.
I think so too, yeah. To your point, not only just his little seizure moment, but but really all of his facial expressions. I know you made fun of his Home Alone face, but he has a lot of great facial expressions in all the different scenes. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think as a child actor, he did about as good of a job as you could possibly do, to be honest with you. And he's like the perfect blend of cuteness and mysteriousness.
Yeah.
Like if you understand why Wendy is so terrified, but also so lovingly wants to care for him, he's evil and something's you don't know what's going on really. He might be evil, he might be psychic, he might be Jesus, you don't know. But a lot of parents, if he was uglier, just fucking throw him in the bin. But now he's too cute. He's too cute, Mason. He's way too cute to do that. You can't do that. So now we're going to talk about Dick. Mason, proceed with your Dick talk.
I think
Dick Halloran. Dick Halloran is a character played by Scatman Crothers.
I'm going to call him Dick.
Yeah, but I didn't want people to think we're actually talking about penises.
So Dick didn't really have a big role in this movie, but I thought...
That was a low blow.
I thought in a small... Even with Dick's small role in this movie, I thought he did a pretty good job. And I thought that, he was it was cool kind of comparing his abilities to Danny's. And yeah, I just thought I liked him. He was a likable character. He was very kind to everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I agree. I just think that actor performer is just such a likable dude. I feel like if I met him on the street, like, you'd want to be his best friend, right?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, let's get some ice cream. We can shine and shit. It'll be cool.
Let's shine together.
Yeah. Shine on. All right, everybody. Spoilers. Oh, they're here. You are
At home.
or
Was it like someone
you
weird?
suck. Welcome to the spoiler zone. Here we have no boundaries. Nothing's off limits.
Nothing at all.
We're talking about the movie, we're talking about the plot, we're talking about the writing, we're talking about our favorite scenes, our least favorite scenes,
Least favorite.
what's good, what's bad, who would we blow, who knows, let's find out.
I know we already talked about like the scares themselves.
Yeah.
But I just want to say overall, this movie's scary.
Scary as fuck.
And I thought this is definitely one of the more scarier, if not the scariest movie I've seen.
I said to Lauren, I think about 3/4 of the way through the movie, actually, I think it was after the room 237 scene.
Yeah.
I turned to Lauren and I said, is this too scary for Mason? Should I have told him to watch this? I had a really parent moment where I'm like, did I just fuck up? Did I just royally fuck up and scar my brother for life? Let's find out.
I'm not scared for life, but it is scary. And like, I think, around the 45-minute mark, like other movies will have like subtle breaks in between scares to like learn about the characters, but all the learning about the characters is right in the beginning.
Yeah.
Again, like around 45 minutes in, there's no breaks. It's scare after scare after scare. And it'll jump in between like the mom's perspective, the kid's perspective, Jack, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's always a scary scene after a scary scene.
Yeah, and you nailed it. The pace picks up in that second half, so it matches your heart rate. So as you're going through, by the time you're at the end of this movie, your heart's just beating like this out of your chest. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. This is one of the scariest movies, and not cheap scary. Not just like, oh, they got me a few good times. No, like, you're gonna think, if you haven't seen this movie before and you watch it, you're gonna think about it for a while.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna want to watch it again. How do you feel about that?
Watch it again.
Yeah. Did you watch it with Lauren?
No.
Yeah, then, all right, well, there's your second viewing right there.
She hates horror movies.
Well, she's gonna buckle the fuck up.
So the quick flashes. I think this was, going back to this whole scary thing.
Right.
I think this was one of the scariest elements, and now we can actually go into specifics. Like quick flashes were scariest. So.
Right. You're talking about where, with the shining ability that Danny and Scatman, I'm just calling him Scatman. I think it's so much cooler of a name. Than Dick. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can call him Dick as much as you want. I'm calling him Scatman. So, basically, we're talking about Danny and Scatman using their shining abilities to both communicate with each other, which I'm not sure if you put that together, because I don't think I put that together the first 1 or 2 times I watched this movie. Those images that are happening when they're communicating, it's literally Danny transmitting, because it was after room 237. He's transmitting to Scatman saying, hey, I went into room 237, this is what I saw, That's what makes Scatman call and fly there and do all that stuff. And I don't blame you for not catching that. It's not very clear, and it's something that happens in a lot of Stephen King movies. Stephen King tends to put a lot of like supernatural things that have very detailed and deep roots in the story that you can't really work into movies. They couldn't give you the whole deep, dark supernatural backstory to explain some of this stuff, so they just put in like half-contrived explanations, which is not great.
The quick flashes.
Yeah.
So I can name some of my favorite first, and you can name some of your favorite. So my favorite one, I think, was the blood going through the thing.
Coming out of the elevator.
Was very is disturbing.
Yeah. Oh,
And
super disturbing.
Have you seen Nope yet?
I have not. I want to though. Don't spoil it for me.
There is one scene that's similar to like all the blood.
Yeah.
And it looks very disturbing, and it reminded me of this. I just thought that's really cool.
Yeah.
And
which I believe, because Jordan Peele is somebody who appreciates and loves classic movies, so I'm not surprised if he put some homages to The Shining in there.
Yes.
Wouldn't be surprised.
And my least favorite one was the one with the skeletons, and they look like Halloween.
That was bad.
Decorations.
That honestly, every time I watch the movie, that's the one part where I'm like, why did you feel the need to include that? Because you're right, everything else in the movie is legitimately scary except for that.
It looks like Halloween decorations.
Yeah, the dog giving a blowjob is scarier than those skeletons.
I didn't ask you about that. What was that? Was the house like horny?
No, so I think this goes back to how the whole Shining thing works. So when you have the Shining, you have the ability to see things that have happened in the past, both good and bad, right? So, you know, I don't think you really get to control everything that you see.
Yeah.
And that just happened to be one of the moments that she saw. Because at that point, the house is not hiding anything. It's shining like crazy. Like basically all the spirits or whatever you want to call them in this house are running amok. So if there's going to be two of them blowing each other on a bed, they're just going to be doing it,
Why are they going to include that? Like, it's like all scary stuff from all this.
I think this is...
A bear giving a blowjob was pretty scary. But... I just don't see...
I just love the look on the guy's face who's not wearing a mask. He's looking at her like, what are you doing here? Like, leave me alone. Let me get blown by my bear friend. It is kind of rude on her part.
Yeah, a little bit.
She's running around flailing her knife. Like, I'm trying to get blown over here, lady.
So what was your favorite, like, Flash?
My favorite Flash.
I think the red room one was cool.
Red Room was cool. I'm a big fan of Red Room. I feel like the elevator is the most memorable. I feel like the elevator one sticks out the most. If you had to think of like what's one iconic image, now for me it's Room 237. That was a Flash in there, wasn't it? I think the Room 237 Flash. When I think of The Shining, I think of Room 237, and that's partly because of my childhood trauma, but also because. I mean, there's a documentary named Room 237 for a reason. It's freaking effective and memorable, and it's probably the scariest part of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, there's the temptation leading up to it, and then that's where you first find out that these things can really have an impact on the physical world.
Yeah, and they can hurt people.
Yeah, because Danny was legitimately attacked.
Because before, like, the whole Room 237 thing, you only thought like these were like projections. Like you didn't know they could actually cause harm.
Right.
Or they could have been like Danny's mind or something. But no, they're actually beings that can damage you, that can hurt you.
Right, exactly. And it's weird because earlier on, like you see Danny riding on his tricycle, he runs into the girls, and he just covers his eyes, and then they go away.
Yeah.
So you start thinking, you're like, oh, okay, so to your point, they're just projections. But as we find out, as the movie goes on, not so much. Things start getting a little dicey.
Yeah.
And we see them actually interacting with the material world. That's, in my opinion, that's the explanation for how Jack gets out of the storage thing. That's one thing that people go back and forth on. Some people don't think there's any supernatural involvement. They think it's all just a mental illness, people going crazy thing.
So.
I agree. I think there has to be a supernatural element to this story. And I think it's also, just because I know Stephen King's background and what his writing style is, there's always supernatural shit.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, it's just, follow the track record, All right, Mason, I do want to run through just some of my favorite scenes. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole movie, obviously. I just picked out 4 that just really stick out to me, as every time I see this movie, I get excited when we get to this scene. All right? So first off, the ice cream conversation between Danny and Dick, where they talk about The Shining. You kind of get the backstory of how that works and how they get it, and talking about how Dick used to communicate with his grandma and have full conversations without talking. So you get an understanding of what's going on to Danny that was just hinted at in the first 20 minutes of the film. And then Dick ends up being, a pretty pivotal character in the story. So it's nice to get that introduction. And then you also get to see how scared Dick is of this place when the kid starts asking him about it. And you're like, if this guy's the head chef and he's this scared of this place, what's going to happen to his family that's never been there before, that's going to be there alone for 5 months?
Kid who actually has like the Shining abilities and stuff like that.
Exactly. So he's going to be able to see or do those types of things that Dick was able to do. So who knows? Who knows if like Dick actually, while he was working there, had some type of impact on controlling the Shining in the house? Who knows? The first bar scene where Lloyd, the bartender, appears and Jack goes up to the bar, and that's where you really get Jack Nicholson's first long monologue. He starts talking about the injury and talking about his past, and you start getting an idea of like, you're like, wait, hold on, where did liquor come from? And he's supposed to have been sober ever since that whole incident, but obviously he starts drinking again. But the question is that real liquor, or does that symbolize insanity? What do those things do?
It symbolizes him like letting his morals go. Like,
it could. So these are the type of things that make this movie really interesting, that I think a lot of people can watch that scene and will give you got 10 different people watch that scene and give 10 different reactions.
Yeah.
And based on that reaction, how you view the rest of the movie is going to be totally different. And then you get to the conclusion, which we'll talk about later, and then everything you thought might get blown the fuck up. So, I love this movie for that. It's so freaking cool.
Yeah.
But that scene with the bartender Lloyd, you really see how crazy and selfish and kind of an asshole Jack is. You see how he is smooth, like how he talks with the bartender, but it's also very creepy and eerie how comfortable he is at this bar that's not supposed to function and no one's supposed to be there and he's not thinking twice about it.
Yeah.
Very, very weird scene.
What do you think he's saying at this point? You think he's really thinking things through?
At that point, it's weird. At that point, I don't think he was completely over the edge, but I think that's what this scene is. I think him imbibing the alcohol, in my opinion, is symbolizing him taking in the evil and craziness of the house, and that's why even more crazy shit starts to happen after this scene. That's my opinion, just tossing it out there. One scene I feel like I never see or hear people talking about, but I honestly think it might be one of the creepiest scenes. When Danny goes back to the bedroom to get his fire truck, and he expects his dad to be asleep,
he's just standing
and Jack's just sitting on the bed staring out the window.
I thought that scared me.
And he calls him over, Danny's like, Dad, can I go get my fire truck? And Jack's like, why don't you come over here and have a little talk with me first? And you're just like, no, fuck the truck, dude, get out of there. But that conversation between them, oh, it's so freaking creepy. It's really, you could tell that Jack's not gonna do anything violent there, but you can see his
gears are turning.
Yes.
His smile.
Yeah, so creepy smile, man.
What startled me is just walking in when the kid turns. Again, it's one of those things where the camera kind of follows him.
Yeah.
It follows him, and he's just sitting up straight, hunched over, looking.
Right, and there's no sound, there's no jump scare thing.
It's just there. I'm like, oh, he's supposed to be asleep. Why is he up? And I just, I don't know.
He's like, I can't sleep, too much to do.
Yeah, it's...
Dude, you're a writer. What the fuck are you talking about? You don't got shit to do. Now, my favorite.
All right.
It's the scene, it's probably the most favorite scene. One of the most famous scenes. Where Wendy finds his writing.
Yeah.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That whole thing. Did you shit a brick when you saw that? Did that blow your mind?
Oh, yeah. Well, when she started flipping the pages, and it's like different formats of the same thing.
So, Stanley Kubrick made those by hand himself.
Yeah, there's no copy and paste.
Yeah, no.
So you're just...
He made all those by hand. I learned that from one of those documentaries. But specifically with this scene.
Yes.
When she starts wanting to talk to him about Danny, he's like, I think you have some very definite plans about what you want to do with Danny, and I'd like to know what they are. Dude, that whole thing. You think Danny ought to see a doctor? He's just being the biggest asshole to her. Just wanted to bring her kid to the doctor. He's completely reasonable. He's talking through his finger. Get him to a doctor. Completely reasonable. And he's just like, you want to take him to a doctor.
And he's like mocking her voice.
It's amazing.
Oh, you want to take the kid to the doctor?
Oh my god. And then eventually it leads to the point where you're going up the steps and she's like, oh, I'll leave. And he's like, have you ever thought about my responsibilities? He's just, I love it.
When he gets locked in the freezer, he's like, this hurts. I need to go to the doctor.
And that's what's great. You can see how sinister he is. That he's trying to play on her emotions. Because he can hear she's crying, so he knows she's having a rough time. He's like, I'm going to play on that and try and get her to let me out. But even before that, when he's on the steps going up, he's like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your fucking brains in. It's just, he's, God.
You know, and he slowly starts with, like, let go of the bat. Like, trying to, like, persuade her that he's not going to hurt her. Right. And then after he says that, he's clearly having
Literally, yes. And then gets quite the concussion.
Yes.
Do you see why he was cast to be the Joker in the Batman movie 10 years later?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We are officially getting to odds and ends. We kind of do a speed round here. We just go through little things we notice throughout the film in no particular order, and we react.
Yes.
So here we go.
All right. So my first odd and end is in the interview scene in the beginning. Now, this wasn't an issue because, well, it's not an issue now because everyone knows that Jack Nicholson is the insane character. So in the beginning, when he's like, "Oh, that's not gonna be me,"
Right,
like
because he
just
told
saying
him
stuff like that.
Well, because he told him about the story of the previous caretaker who killed his family.
Yeah.
And then he replies with,
That's not gonna be me. Trust me, I'm not that guy. Whatever.
Right.
All this stuff. He's like saying, "Oh, this won't be me," and it's very obvious foreshadowing.
"Oh, there's a lot of that in this
So
movie."
I'd imagine, back then when people didn't really know that he was going to be the serial killer guy,
Right.
that it would be a bit obvious.
Yeah.
But I mean, now everyone knows that Jack Nicholson is the bad guy.
Right,
So-
exactly. Yeah, he's kind of established that persona as an actor, and just this movie has such a storied following.
Yeah.
I think everyone at least has a faint idea of what The Shining is about, even if you haven't seen it before, you know? Yeah, and you brought up the foreshadowing, which is very prevalent and very heavy-handed in this movie. You have the hedge maze, which they allude to earlier when Wendy and Danny go through it, and then that's what allows Danny to come out in the end at that hedge maze. And then there is also the radio and the snowplow.
Yes.
They're like, "Oh, come here. You're gonna want to know how these things work in case a big snowstorm happens." And then
Big snowstorm happens.
big snowstorm happens, and they need them. And then the fact that Jack knows how to use them and take them apart ends up kind of sucking ass.
So as somebody who struggles with old technology,
Yeah.
what is this whole radio thing?
I was waiting for this question. I have it here. Does Mason know what a phone switchboard or radio is? The answer is no to both of those.
Is it just like a big walkie-talkie? Because they hold on a button, they're like over, and like
It's like Snapchat, but with your voice. Think about it as a walkie-talkie that you could set with way more frequencies. That's really all a walkie-talkie is. It is a portable radio that you can communicate through. Yeah.
I just want to make sure, I knew what this was. I have one more on the end.
Yeah.
Was it Wendy can't swing a bat for shit. She's holding the bat in the middle of it. It's common sense to hold it at the bottom of the bat so you can swing it.
I have a feeling that Wendy is not the most physically coordinated person in the world. I don't think she's going to make the Olympics.
Yeah, but it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
If you're holding something, it's more strength if you hold it at the bottom than holding it at the middle.
Yeah, you also get more reach.
Yeah.
It's not even just about the strength, but when you want to keep someone away from you, you want to have the biggest distance possible. So I agree. That's why you would grab the bottom.
Yeah.
How she was running with the knife, I was terrified for her, honestly. If she just tripped.
She's stumbling like that.
Dude, this knife is jumping around. She's running with Danny by her side at one point. You're gonna cut the kid. Be careful. I just think she's not coordinated. I would like to see her on a basketball court and see what that looks like. So Mason, you came into this world after indoor smoking had already been outlawed. So how weird is it for you to watch Shelley Duvall smoke a cigarette next to her son while he's eating a sandwich?
Yeah.
In their 700 square foot apartment.
I mean, it wasn't too distracting, but I definitely did
It sticks out, right?
Yeah, it sticks out.
So Mason,
So Alex,
I have a feeling that you really appreciated the artwork on Dick's walls.
I didn't notice it.
You didn't notice it?
I didn't notice it. I didn't see it.
You didn't see it?
I didn't see it.
You missed big old titties?
Somehow.
How? Twice! He has a picture above his TV, his 8-inch TV, has a 30-inch portrait of a nude woman with her titties hanging out. And then it goes to his bed and it pans up, he's got another nude woman painting above his bed.
I did not see it.
Dude!
I didn't see it.
You must have been looking at your phone, because it doesn't...
wasn't. I swear to God. I guess I was just looking at the red phone. The fact that I know what color the phone is knows that I was looking at something else.
I think this says a lot more about you than you think.
I was looking at dick more than...
Yeah, you're focusing on the dick instead of titties. Take that as you will. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Just saying I'm learning a lot about you. Does Lauren know about this?
Well...
Lauren should be happy. You're so devoted and such a good boyfriend. You don't even notice titties. That's how good you are.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
What a guy.
Such a gentleman.
What a guy. What I thought would be even funnier, so you see those two paintings, and now you have another reason to rewatch this movie. So you're gonna rewatch it and be like, how did I not see that? It's literally most of what you see. It's like half the screen. Anyway, when you know how he gets out of bed, he's talking on the phone and it's in the dark.
Yeah.
What I would have loved if after he hung up the phone, he like turned on the lights and they were just all nude pictures. He just realizes his whole home is filled with nude photos, and they never bring it up. They never bring it up again. It's never addressed. He just gets stabbed in the chest, and it's over. And I'm just left there wondering who got all of his booby art.
Who inherited it?
Who inherited it? Someone.
Some cops are gonna like walk in his room, like walk in the house, inspect it and everything, and they're just gonna be like, ooh.
Yeah.
Well, what's
This is evidence.
What's that guy going on?
I'm taking the evidence in the bathroom. We've made it. We are here.
Right now.
We are at the conclusion and hold-upability portion of our review.
Yes.
We're getting down to the nuts and bolts. We're putting out a number. Mason, what is your hold-upability rating for The Shining?
My number is a 9.25.
Whoa!
I'm gonna give it 9.5, but I think after our discussion, I'm gonna knock it down a quarter of a point.
Okay.
So
some people would say you can't do that, but I'm gonna overrule those fuckers. Go ahead.
You guys don't determine our ratings.
That's right. It's our channel. Remember that.
We used to rate our things like toothbrushes. Okay, if you're an OG, you remember that.
Be happy you get a number at all. What are the things that keep the score so high, and what are the things that keep it from being a perfect 10?
So, something that keeps the score so high is the score and the soundtrack. And then I think the characters' acting is pretty much flawless. The scares are pretty much flawless. I think the movie overall, with like very little critiques, I think is probably the scariest movie I've seen.
Give it that. It does have a little bit of old tech, which would throw off somebody who's younger. Like that, honestly, even that phone switchboard is old for me. Like that's old tech. So don't blame me for that at all. If that's even just 0.05, I think that's fair. So here we go, people. Let's find out what the old man thinks. I think that this movie deserves a 9.7. Out of 10. I can't give it a perfect 10.
Yeah.
As we said earlier, you got your old tech. You definitely have some moments where it feels a little dated. Opening credits, just white text. Probably could have done better. But overall, great script. Even better performances. And the score is one of my favorite scores of all time.
Yeah.
Mold all that together. It's nearly perfect.
Yeah.
I would hold it up against any other horror movie. There are other ones that compete. I'm not saying that there aren't others that are close. In terms of the composition of making a movie,
making a horror movie, like it's perfect.
Exactly. It's so much better than watching like Friday the 13th. It's just not. You can't even compare them. So please check it out. Let us know what you think. Like, comment. Let us know what you thought of the movie. If you agree, disagree with anything that we said.
Yes.
Thanks for checking out this video.
Like and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about the movie in the comments below.
Let us know if there's any movies you want us to watch. Who knows? Maybe we'll watch them together.